Thank you so much for taking time to join us for Enterprise Agility Champs October meetup. And we have two amazing Agile leaders from the Washington, D.C. area, Michael Doherty and Pete Oliver Kruger. And they're here to present today, Choose Your Own Agile Adventure. What a nice name. And I'm very excited to see what they have to present. From what I understand, this is all about each transformation is unique, just like a snowflake, and each organization has different needs, and each organization's transformation happens in a different way. And the presenters today are going to share with us their experience, their insights on how a standard agile, approach doesn't work for each organization, and there has to be, some customization that is needed here. And they have created what is called the Library of Agile. I'm extremely curious to know about what the Library of Agile is, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our presenters, Pete and Michael. Just a little bit of background about our presenters and speakers today. Mike, Agile Mike, as he's known, has over 25 years of experience with software development. He is known to be a leader in the community. He is very active in the scaled Agile community. And across the DC area, you would always find him volunteering and speaking at different events. It is an immense pleasure to have Agile Mike as our presenter today. Pete, I've known Pete for, I don't know how long, 7, 8 years now. And he is, again, another extremely important part of our DC Agile network. He also brings about 25 years of experience as an entrepreneur, speaker, trainer, and a consultant. And he is extremely passionate about sharing his knowledge, and he has taught hundreds of classes, both for SPC as well as for Scrum practitioner, and we are excited to have Pete sharing his knowledge with us today. Without further ado, please help me welcome our speakers for today, Michael and Peter. Over to you, Mike and Peter.
All right, thank you. I'm going to start off, and first off, I'm wearing my black turtleneck, so I'm going to give my Steve Jobs pose here for Halloween time. All right, I wish I was alive and young Steve Jobs, as wealthy and as famous as he is. But in any event, that's about as far as I'm going to go for the Halloween pose. Really glad to be here. And so we're going to just get right into it because we're going to make this a working session. And first off, notice we are writing a book. We're more than halfway through it. It will likely be released next year, but you didn't hear that from me, meaning that if it goes into 2023, that means we took longer. It'll be done when it's done. So that's the book, Shift from Product to People. And we're going to move on to letting Pete talk a little bit about this.
Yes. So what we wanted to talk to you all about today is the stuff behind all of the stuff that we do. We've got all these different types of frameworks, and they all work and they all don't work. We've got Agile itself is under this nice big banner. It has all these different possibilities for ways to do things. We got a lot of great sharing of different techniques. Some work, some don't work. And so a while back, there's several of us that really started looking into why do things fail? Like, why do some things not work with some teams and they do work with other teams? What is it about, doing these transitions? There's some people that roll out safe and it works great and it's fantastic. And other people roll out safe and it doesn't work at all. Other people try to use Scrum at scale and it works, and that doesn't work for them. Some people are like, no frameworks, we've tried that and it's all failed. And we noticed that there was a pattern in how we would do things, and that it came around to understanding those points of failure, what caused those sort of points of failure, and then being able to tackle those things and lead them into points of success. And my dog is also excited about
guest speaker here, the dog. Yes.
Yeah. All right, next slide, please, Michael. I'm clicking my own buttons over here and it's not doing anything. Right.
Yeah, okay. You got to use my mouse.
So number one issue that we find is that folks get into they fall in love with the solution. And so while there may have been a problem, there may have been an issue or a challenge we're trying to solve, maybe we're solving things for customers, whatever it is that sort of drove us, we get to the point where we're like, okay, this is a problem we're going to solve. This is how we're going to solve it. This is the solution. This is the technique we're going to use. And then we double down on that. We're working on that. We start to lose sight of this problem. And the problem, disappears. And as long as we do the solution right and implement the solution right, then we assume that everything is going to be okay. So one of the things that I've found that has been one of the most pivotal and best ways to change the outcome is to get people to go trace it back to the problem. So even if our solution is solving the problem, we still need to think about the problem. We still need to understand what problem that is and how we're solving it and how we're doing that, so that we can, and we may even find that we are going to, we may even find that we're going to find new solutions to those problems and better solutions to those problems. That's going to really help us to evolve. So this is going to be at the core of what we want to do with you today. So we were going to do an interactive session here. And so we want you to start thinking about some problems. Write down some problems that you're dealing with with teams that, if you're coaches, maybe they're teams that you're coaching. If you're on an Agile team yourself, maybe it is, something that your team is working on right now that has a trouble. It doesn't have to be your own problems. It could be a problem of somebody else. But start to think of something that is really important, that really is pivotal to what you're trying to do. We often say that any problems that get your emotions up are usually the more important problems to tackle. So start thinking about that. Just jot it down for yourself. We're going to come back to that in just a little bit. Next slide.
Yes, and just remember, wicked problems that you have, you can put on a piece of paper if you're under 30. That's okay. And just something, at least one that's a real big challenge you would like to try to untangle that have been plaguing you for quite a while, or even something just recently.
All right, so second problem that we usually find that gets in the way of Agile transformations or any sort of Agile improvements that we start to do is this concept. There's this old phrase, the saying in Polish is "nie mój cyrk, nie mój małpy," which means "not my circus, not my monkey." And it becomes a sort of representation that there is this that is maybe somebody else's job, or that's somebody else's responsibility. And one of the things we found is that while roles can be very important in Agile, they can also get in the way of Agile. And when you think of Agile as the banner, there are no real standard roles. If you think about some of the things that are so popular about, in Agile, like the Scrum Master came from Scrum, Product Owner came from Scrum. They've now passed over, and like people from other different frameworks have started picking up the names. Sometimes they have different names, sometimes they have different responsibilities. And some places are just like everybody's a team member. And we don't have, this role or that particular role. And that's one of the things that really comes about, is that you don't need to necessarily have the roles to be successful in Agile, but there are places where we like to work. There are parts of the job that we like better than other jobs, or that we are more skilled in doing one particular area than maybe in another. And so we just sort of switch over to calling that points of collaboration. And to also emphasize this point that we're coming together to collaborate on solutions, to collaborate on the stuff that we are working on. So instead of seeing any reference to roles, what you're going to see here is that we've got points of collaboration about people practices. So this will be where you're going to work with Scrum Masters or dev managers, HR kind of folks. And then we have a point of collaboration around design. And so this is where you'll see the product owner people and the product manager people will start to come into play, business analysts, but also developers. There's a whole wide variety that can participate in design. Likewise, there's planning. So planning, could be the Scrum Master. You could have project managers. Some places still have project managers, and that totally can be fine. It's not, everybody's favorite, and we're supposed to hate the project managers. But there is a place for project managers inside of Agile. And it just depends on what role you're doing. So if we're talking about people who do planning and do planning well, that's a great point of collaboration. So getting out of the roles and thinking about this. The other ones are implementation. Now we use the implementation instead of coding because Agile applies in multiple different places, not just in software. So we can do Agile in HR, we can do Agile in government and documentation, even do Agile with some theater companies. And it works really, really great. So we are going to talk about this idea of implementation instead. Likewise, verification instead of necessarily testing, because we may not be doing testing, per se. It's more of a software term. And then operations. What do we have to do to keep the lights on and keep everything running? And it doesn't have to be technical operations. It could be just the operations of the business could fit into that point of collaboration as well. So if you think about those problems, and you've been writing down some of those problems, that your teams have been tackling, pick one of those things. One of the things is probably at the top of that. And now think about which area of collaboration does that problem show up? Is it within the people space, the design space, planning, implementation, verification, or operations? Add that to we'd love to have you add that to the chat, as you can see up here on the slide.
Yeah, and you can have it be in more than one collaboration, but just pick the one that seems to be the most relevant.
Yeah.
This is where the lights start piling up on the chat. We've gotten one in. Ding. Ding, ding, ding. Managers, verification, sustainable work across the organization. Yep. I'm not sure where that fits.
We'll have to come into a little bit more detail about the sustainable work across the organization. I'm curious about where that one goes. Yeah. Managers is probably people, yep. Although it could also be in the realm of planning or design, depending on which kind of manager it is. All right, so we got some others for verification, others for people. Great, thank you. Implementation, decision-making, and planning. Yep.
Yeah, all right, good.
Now, I do find that there's decision-making around design and there's decision-making around planning. And so that can be a distinction there. All right, let me hop to the next slide there, Michael.
All right.
All right, issue number 3 that usually gets in the way is when people think that there is nothing that they can do. That's a problem with that team, or that's a problem with management, that's a problem with strategy, or maybe it's the opposite. You're up there at the organizational level and that's a problem with the team and I don't have control over the team. There's nothing I can do about that. What we found is that there are many different, and we call them spheres of influence, or a range of influence that can be affected. And there's different practices in each of those different categories that can be used no matter where you are in the organization. And so looking for practices that are accessible to you where you are in that organization, where you have that range of influence can make a biggest difference. So we kind of put this together into 4 categories of team, product, organization, and impact. And maybe made them a little bit too gray here for the organization impact, but I'll read through these real quickly. So the team is what we consider to be the people that you collaborate with on a regular basis. So it's a smaller group of people. Now you could be an organizational manager and you collaborate, on a regular basis with, some admins and some other strategic folks, or maybe, the chief, marketing officer, and that is your team. So when we think team isn't about where you are in the hierarchy. Team is about the people that you work with on a regular basis, because you have a sphere of control, a sphere of influence within that team that you work with on a regular basis. Product is where we define sort of the boundaries where you have multiple teams working together, where you may not be working directly with that team every single day, but you do interact with them on a regular basis. So that's what we would call the area of sort of a team of teams. And we give the name of product for that category. So it's a little bit larger. It's encompassing multiple teams. So it sort of goes in that way. Organization is then going to be anything that affects the entire organization, all the teams, all the product lines, all those pieces together. There's a whole different set of practices, and there's a whole different set of techniques that are executed organizational wide that differ from product and team practices. And then the fourth one we call impact. And it really represents anything that is kind of global, that is like bigger than any one organization. So anytime we're dealing with impact practices, then that's going to be something that is like dealing with, climate change, or dealing with creating better workplaces. We have practices that have to deal with our sort of environments, but there are these practices about like positive psychology and creating psychological safety. And these are things that are larger than our organization, but we can tap into and participate in. So that's what we call sort of the impact space. So you can kind of see they have these sort of nested sort of ranges here. So team of teams, or the product space, organization on top of that, and the impact. If you skip to the next slide there, Michael, I want to go through the idea of range of control and range of influence. This is the last thing I want you to think about here as well. So I'm asking you to choose problems. We're asking you to take a look at the area, the design or people or that. And now we're looking at sort of where can you make a change? Where do you have an effect? So if you have a particular team and you interact with them and you are part of the decision-making process, then we would say that that is within your range of control. We could also say that if your job is like the product manager, then your job may be interacting with those teams of teams. So your range of control might be all of teams of teams practices. Likewise, you could be a director or an executive, or a HR person, and so you're dealing with the scope of the organization. So that could also be your range of control. So the range of control, again, doesn't have to do with where you are in the organization. It has to do with the boundaries of where you actually are part of the decision-making process. And then just outside of the range of control, we have our range of influence. And so the range of influence is the parts that we interact with, where we have a voice and we have somebody that we can talk to, and they will listen to us, but we don't make the decisions in their space. So as a product manager, my range of control might be in the product space, but I have a range of influence down into the teams that are part of my product line. And I have a range of influence maybe up into organizational and sales, and with the directors that are above me in the organization. Now, then there's the last part here that we're going to think about is what are those things that are outside your range of influence? And so if we can identify where we can make a change, where we're going to be effective, which of these spheres of influence, can we actually interact with, and which ones, more importantly, that we can't interact with, then that helps us to get down to a real good point about this.
Okay. And this is the time where you can start typing in your keyboard like Jason Riley's ahead of most everyone else. What is exactly that sphere of influence, whether you're doing team level or product level for your particular challenge? Where does it apply more for you? So give it a minute or two, minute probably tops to type it in.
Yeah, now we're going to ask you just for tonight, we're going to focus on the team and the product because there's such a wide range of things. And we find that team and product applies in more cases. So it just makes it better for a meetup type of environment. But think about, where is your range of control? Where's your range of influence between like team or product? Like I said, everybody does have a team. And everybody does have other teams that they interact with. Even, if you are normally working at the organizational level, you just have access to more areas than maybe some other folks. So what we're going to have you do, so I know it's a question here from Greg, do you mean direct influence or do you mean places where you can try to have influence? And it's really both of those. So what we're going to do is we want to notice the difference between places you have influence and don't have influence, and then have you go through our next step of the exercise and look through the different categories and look through the different points of guidance. And that's going to help us to figure out, where you could make a change and also identify where a change might need to be made. So by looking across those multiple different areas. All right, so we've got both. We got team, we got some people in the product space, a nice, good range there. Michael, shall we look at the next slide?
Absolutely. And okay, so we have what we call AMI. That's it sounds like a girl's name, but it's an acronym, AMMI. That stands for the Agile Mindset Mapping Index. It is the core of the Library of Agile, which is the site that I'm going to go ahead and put onto the chat. You can go ahead and go to that. We're going to talk through it. You've been just doing a couple of the first steps you would have with using the AMI tool in the Library of Agile, which is freely available. Now, as Pete mentioned, we're only going to focus on the team and product practices. We're not going to try to be Elon Musk and become a 300 billionaire and have 3 companies and try to save all the world's problems with technology. That's what organization impact get to. But in any event, we're just going to stick to those first 2 levels. And I do like to say it's a little, here's some things that I would say is different, because oftentimes people say, this sounds like another assessment tool. No, it's not just an assessment tool. You can say, yes, it is, but yes, and here's what's different. First off, it's interrelated. It's got system syncing. All these things are connected to each other, and it takes the whole system into place, all the way from your teams to the world. And they're all connected, like you would have in a safe backlog, where you may have your portfolio and solution and program, and then your team backlogs. It's all connected here within what we have in the Library of Agile and AMI. So there's that interrelationship. And we're going to go through a little bit more of the details here. Feel free to go to the website, and I'll just pop there for a moment and come back to the presentation just to show you. And that is, let me go, boom, here we go. This is the Library of Agile. You can click on any of these little squares here and go into what's called the playbook. And I'll just go to team practices, and then it will show you what the team practices are. Now, it may not have the most beautiful UI, UX experience here. Apologize for that, but it does get you all of the content in these, and you can bounce around between the content between them. Again, we're not going to look at impact and organization, just product and team practices. So back to the presentation. Here we go. So these are collaboration. They're not categories. Sometimes you can think of them like categories, but just remember, these are always stemmed into people talking to each other, co-creation, everybody's involved. You're not doing design related problem solving in a vacuum. So all of these are dependent on collaborations. So the 6 are people, collaborations, design, plan, and the 4 areas or spheres of influence: the team, product, market, and impact. So with that, we started cataloging the techniques, putting together, coming up with each of these have for their practices, like team practices, there can be anywhere from about 2 to 6 practices per area. Now there is one in impact that's 1 practice, but usually it's about 2 to 6. And the total amount's close to 80 total breakdowns of the practices into techniques. So there's a lot here. This starts really high level, really simple, and then you start going in deeper and deeper and deeper until you're getting to the place that you would for your particular challenges. So that's where we can also look at this from a different perspective of what kind of framework are you doing? Let's forget the framework wars, whether you believe in less, discipline, agile, or just plain old Scrum, Scrum at scale, Kanban with XP, whatever mix you might have. We can use this for any of those frameworks, any way that you go about it, whether you're doing a Scrum version, if we're doing feature mapping, Jeff Patton's user story mapping is a good one to use. That's same with Kanban. You can use flow charts if you're not doing IT, and so on. Just recognize this is very flexible to use, not just within IT, but beyond IT, Internet of Things. If you're doing things like Joe Justice's Wiki Speed, where you build a car using Agile, we could do the same thing with this. Look at the problems in building a car in an Agile manner. So this is the fun part in that, got a confession to make. We were going to do this in the breakout rooms. Unfortunately, Zoom is not set up correctly for us to do breakout rooms. So we're going to punt and use something we'll call 1-all, which is a real bastardization of the liberating structure 1, 2, 4 all. And basically everybody's come up with your own, or most everybody has come up with your own particular area that you'd want to go over, and the particular collaboration that you believe is related to that. So think of one, and what we're going to do is instead of going as groups into our breakout rooms, what I would suggest is that you go ahead and go into the Library of Agile. You can find out which one applies to you in your context, and then we're going to do lean coffee, and then you can put it in lean coffee. So let me put lean coffee on the screen here, and here it is.
I just dropped the link into the chat as well.
Thank you. And we put 2 examples here to give you an idea of the template on how you can do it. You can come in there as a guest. You don't have to set up an account or anything, so keep that in mind. And an example here is like product owner insufficiently engaged. Anybody experienced that before? Anybody? No, never. We got some sarcastic people here. Either that or you just started working with product owners for the first time in your life. Okay, and that would be, therefore, I would go into 𝐂𝐸 for that and go, okay, team, maybe I think it's related to daily collaboration, like product owner's not showing up, no product owner. Try to ping the product owner and answer a question about what we're doing next. And product owner's not around, product owner's too busy, product owner won't respond, right? So that could be a good example of one. Another example, we have too many meetings. Now I put 2 here, 3.5 and 4.3. So with this, we look at this, 3.5 working sessions, and click, and it's not clicking. Let's try it again. There it goes. Just took a little bit of a moment there. So let's see if we can have working sessions instead of meetings. That sounds very interesting. And what was the other one? 4.3. Okay. Wait, how can it be 4.3? I might have made a mistake there. Oh, wait, it's product 4.3. Got it. Yep. So I'd go to product. Let's get back up here. See, there's 2 different main areas, right? So product 4.3, shared better practices. So maybe there's some other teams out there that are getting it together a little bit with how beneficial and valuable their meetings are. We can start working together on that. So those are 2 examples. And I gave you a little bit of clue how you can go through 𝐂𝐸 and be able to find the direction you can take your challenges that you have.
So what we want to do for the exercise here is to give you some time to go to look through the websites and to look at those points of guidance, and then come back and put into the lean coffee a particular topic that we can talk about. And then we're going to come back around and we are going to brainstorm as a group potential solutions for those different topics. So we're going to do the lean coffee, we're going to vote on it, talk about what we want to talk about next. But the action here is to think about that problem that you want to solve, put it in context of what the points of collaboration are, and then go look at the team and the product scope. So if it's about design, go look at team design and product design and read through those things and see if there's anything listed in there, those points of guidance that you don't do. That you're looking at your teams and you're like, oh, yeah, our teams don't do this. This might be the source of our problem. And then you can capture or copy that, and we can put that into the lean coffee. And then we're going to come back, and our lean coffee is going to be brainstorming as a group ways to solve that problem. So we'll give you some time there to think about that, to do some research. Also, this would probably be a good time if you have some questions or you want some clarifying questions, find out more details about that. Go ahead, feel free to raise your hand, and then we will answer those questions now. If you don't know how to raise your hand, you can just raise your hand on the screen. We should most be able to see it. Also, under the reactions, there is a button. So down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a button that says raise hand. All right, so our first hand that is up is Greg.
I've just gone into the website. I can't see where the playbook is. Whereabouts is the playbook on the website?
Okay,
Sure.
I'm sharing. So
Oh,
if
it's
you're,
in the. Sorry, it's in the menu. It's in the menu. It's not in the actual thing itself. Okay, got it.
kind of tricky though, Greg. Something we're going to fix is that, yeah, you can click the playbook here and go to the team and product practices. Also, if you click on these squares, it'll get you there. If you click on the middle, nothing happens. I did that too.
I just put it in the chat, Greg.
Yeah, thank you, Toby.
Okay, cool. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that works too. Thank you.
Yeah,
All
could
right.
have had a V8.
And Jason's up next.
Cool. Are you gonna work through the examples? Because my brand new team just did retrospective and theirs was, we have too many meetings.
Always
All right, we're gonna do voting, so you can totally vote for that one.
Right on.
You have to tell them we'll have a meeting to solve that problem.
You're right. I strongly thought about that, Toby.
Any other questions? Hands raised? No. Well, here's one of my favorite things to do. Oh, Alex has a question. Alex.
Back to you, Alex.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
I
so
think you're double
funny.
muted there. Alex, you're double muted. We can't
Alex,
hear
you're
you.
back. Come on. You're still alive. Alex Roth, I mean.
The mute is off, but the sound is not there.
Alex, your mute is still on. Okay.
Okay, he's going to do his best Charlie
He's trying
Chaplin.
really hard to talk. So you can put
Right.
it in chat, or if you want to take your headset off, I don't know if that's a possibility.
Tell us in charades. Just do the motions.
Act it out.
Yeah.
Michael, you're so funny.
Okay.
There you are. We
Oh,
hear you.
there's something.
And you're gone again.
We
No,
lost
not
you
anymore.
again.
Uh-oh.
Sounds like a weak connection, like it was there and sparked out.
Just
So
put it in
let's
chat,
move on.
Alex.
Anyone else?
You can type it in the chat,
Type in the
Alex.
chat. Yeah, that's smart. Don't worry, it's only 10 hours of this music.
All right, so I see Alex is looking in the product verification section on outcome verification.
Less IT centric. It, like the movie It, Stephen King? No.
I'm gonna go there as well.
We can't answer your question, Alex, until we know how much you wagered.
So, okay.
Let's see if this is good.
There you
Oh,
go,
look
Alex.
at that.
This may be better.
Yes.
Mildly sensitive. I'm going to stare at my mic settings, but as I'm talking, because I was thinking in terms of you know, working with like an engagement of other folks to test to see if we're doing the right thing. So I assume that would be under product verification. But when I was looking at this, it seems like outcome verification's talking a little bit to like things like Cucumber and like doing actual test cases. So am I looking in the wrong section? Am I referring to the wrong thing? Because I'm talking about coaching engagements and doing a verification that we are doing the right thing.
Yeah, so not necessarily. So I've used the same principles even with like a theater company. Actually, Michael, if you don't mind scrolling down to that section, so we can have that referenced a little bit. So like there's a difference in, so even if it's not IT tests, it's not software tests. This idea of verifying what you want, or really knowing what the outcome is that you want to do, and verifying that you're getting that outcome. So just to use like a generic sense of like a theater setting, just because it's so not software related, the focus on the steps would be focus on, did you practice your lines? Are you able to spit the lines back out? But the verification of whether or not you've done that right is, do we have an impactful performance that is affecting the people in the in the audience, or in a rehearsal situation? Then that's the proxy for that is the director. And so the director is looking at what's the impact of your performance, not just did you memorize the line and repeat all those lines back. So that can apply in a non-software kind of environment, all three of those things.
Okay, how are we doing with Alex? Was that sufficient enough to move you forward?
That was the business agility centric answer I was looking for. Thank you.
Woo! All right, let's see how we're doing. We got 2 people have added to the Lean Coffee table. So, and also I don't see any references to the Library of Agile's 𝐂𝐴ME. If you can figure out where you go with that, product or team, P or T, and then the actual practice number, and I'll call it the sub-practice. If not, then we can just work through it together, but I can help with voting. Anyone else have your own that you want to bring up, like too many meetings? Well, we already got the example, so maybe that will work if people vote on it, which I see we've got a bit of votes going on already for that.
I just want you guys to know I kind of find a bug, so just let me know when you want me to send that to you.
Yeah, I found a bug. Pete's one of those Amazon people that like he changed things just like yesterday or something, and so there were bugs that came out of it, like you click on something, it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, well, I went to the on the top right side where about 𝐂𝐴ME.
Mm-hmm.
And when I scrolled down to and reorganized them for clarity, under P5 verification, P5.4 is outcome verification, but where you just went, it was 5.3, I believe.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
The numbering is off.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, my tester falls out every time I see something like that. So,
well, we're running a little low on time. I'd like to get time to crank through at least 2 or maybe 3 of these if time permitting. So please put your ideas in. If you're not familiar with Lean Coffee, please get familiar with it. But what you do is, as a guest, you got these little dots here that show you how many votes. Now, Pete shouldn't be voting. I'm not going to be voting. And, Toby, if you want to, Knessa, if you want to, it's up to you. But you would just click on the card with the vote. And notice it pops up, vote, vote. I'm going to take off my votes. And you get 3 total votes. You can put in any card. You can put all 3 in one card. You can put them all in 3 different cards. So we'll just take another minute to do that. And then I'm going to organize them by highest vote. We'll rustle the top, and then we'll talk through each of them, starting off like with 5 minutes and then going 3 minutes if everybody votes on it beyond that, probably 2 or 3 minutes. Because we want to get through 2 or 3 of these with time amount. That doesn't give us much. So do your voting. Once I stop seeing dots disappear, that's when I'm going to, or slow down, that's when I'm going to hit the start discussion and prioritize these. That's it. I missed the bum bum, but okay. Close enough. There's a couple left. Nancy, you got one left. Junie, you got one left. And whatever, that's close enough.
Share the link again in case you came. Yeah.
Now we're moving. We're cooking with gas here. Looks like the top 3 are pretty obvious. leadership forcing solution decision approach. And yes, we actually got product 1.2 as an example here. So let's start with this one. There you go. We're going to do 5 minutes. All right. So let's go to P1.2. And it's, again, just as to let everyone know, leadership forcing solution decision approach. So basically, leadership's telling everybody what to do.
Yeah. So this is probably something that, we got a lot of votes, so it's sitting in a bunch of different places. But would the person who posted that card like to give us a brief, maybe 30-second, recap of, what was driving that issue for you?
Sure, it's Bobby. We have a situation where we have a couple folks in leadership who have, it's kind of like what you mentioned at the beginning, Pete, where they've gotten themselves like committed to a solution and haven't actually given the technical team the opportunity to delve into whether that is the appropriate solution, given our circumstances in our system and what have you. And now they basically want us to move forward with this solution that they have as their brainchild, but the team needs to do some due diligence, and there are serious concerns that this is not the appropriate approach for the system's integrity.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, the hippo syndrome. So how do we tackle that? And so we've got these problem categories. So one of the tricks that I use is I'll often look up and down or side to side in these areas and say, all right, so we are dealing with a people issue here. So I think that we have, let's see, that was, yeah, P1.2, you have identified this as a people issue that's tackling this. And so, in some ways it could be a design issue we could see. Now the description that you give, so I look at sort of like the idea of integrating multiple points of view. And so that sort of calls out this problem, that calls out the issue that we're running, top-down decision-making, that we need to actively solicit, incorporate, and address these points of view. And so then there's a bunch of different techniques that we could use in order to drive, those sorts of things. So I just like to sort of put out some ideas from the crowd. You can type it into the chat, or you could raise your hand and say, what are some ways that you have solved this problem, or that ways that you've gotten some of the executives or the directors running the program to not dictate solutions?
I could go, Pete. This is Junie.
All right.
We had a situation where it wasn't like a director, but it was somebody pretty influential who had years of somebody more influential in the bigger scheme of things, where she did try to dictate each and every decision making from like solutioning to prioritization. So we created a change prioritization board where we brought people from different agencies and gave equal voting rights to the representative of different agencies, so that it would be, it doesn't still work the way you would want to, because if you have the subject matter expertise and also the biggest voice, you still kind of dominate the conversation, but it still at the end of the day gave some distribution of that power amongst different people from different agencies, which worked to a large extent, but I wouldn't say like was a complete remedy, but just a little bit better than how it was before.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, that's a great technique. And sometimes that voting allows you to distribute that, and you're forcing multiple different perspectives in order to sort of put them into their place. So that would work. We got a couple in the chat here. So Todd and Jason are both listing this idea of hypothesis testing and the scientific method. Those are actually techniques that we do have listed under the organizational realm. But do either one of you want to give, a nice 20 or 30 seconds pitch?
Well, we're down to under 5. So what we're going to do here is visually. We're going to do this visually. If you want it to continue, just put your thumbs up on the screen. All right. Most everyone's got their camera on, right? Well, a lot of people do.
Wow.
You can put it in the chat too. You can just put yes or no. All right. If we get more yeses and no, we'll continue for another 3 minutes. Yes? Do you want to continue or go on to the next one? All right. I'm seeing more no's than yeses. We've gone through it enough. So we're going to finish the topic. The next one. Let's just pull this out of here. And we got untrained product owners on rotation from business.
I put that one, and I can talk a little bit about it. So this happens quite often where they send a product owner from business on rotation, and the person is not really trained in Agile or any product owner kind of specialist area either. And by the time we get that person ready and performing, then the shift happens again, and then they send yet another new one. A lot of the focus is on the Scrum Master, and a lot of training and a lot of expectations from a process perspective from the Scrum Master, but it's often missing from the product owner, and that throws a disbalance. So that's the problem that I wanted to share and see how might we solve that.
All right, so you can drop some thoughts and answers into the chats, or if you want to raise your hand and offer some suggestions. I'll toss one in off the bat here, which is that I find Amy itself is very useful. So if you've got somebody that's coming in that doesn't know product in the first place, one of the things that I might do is sort of a coaching for that person is say, hey, great, let's just walk through this thing. Let's go take a look at the Amy category. You're going to be responsible for design within this team. I'm sure you know design, you know product, but let me show you what we cover as far as design inside of Agile, and then have them look through this stuff and look at the different points of guidance on there and say, is there anything on there that's different from what you've done before, anything that's unusual or that you weren't expecting? I'd be happy to go into more details about it and explain why Agile likes to do things this way rather than the way that maybe you are used to doing things. And then that opens up the door for us to be able to introduce new techniques and to train them in doing in trying out new practices. All right, so I'm seeing here that Alex is saying maybe use T3.1 collaborative planning.
Yeah, because team members and everyone else other than the product owner, they do have some continuity of where the product's going from the other product owners that have been in the turnstile. Unless you're like the boss owning all the resources, Toby, you can't stop that from happening, whatever reasons are. Maybe you can try to entice them to stay and make it an exciting, dynamic work environment. But if it's like they're leaving because management moves them on, or your project's not the favorite child and you go on to another project after they've gone through your project or product as a training, then yeah, what can you do? You can at least get continuity with everybody else that's there. And I love what Greg Pitcher put in the chat here. By the way, Greg, Vasco Duarte is our publisher for our book. So we know all about 𝐂𝐡𝐨𝐿 series and the self-coaching that Vasco has. That's some awesome stuff in his material. And that guy's just amazing. He's an android. I know it. He's an android.
And Alex, I don't know if your mic is still not working very well. Did you want to say something, or are you putting it in chat? Nope, not working. All right, I'll read it for you. Oh, there it is. Now it is.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. I will stand perfectly still in case it's a wire issue. I just mentioned because I had that happen a lot with rotating POs and even rotating Scrum Masters when I was at the team level. And collaborative planning was the only way for us to get a, unified vision. And then from there, it was just reinforcing that with those product owners. So even if they weren't quite as agile, speaking to them and asking them those powerful questions from an Agile perspective, you know, was enough to at least get the ball rolling, so that when people got to see our demos at the end of sprints and things like that, we weren't as far off base. And if they questioned it, then the product owner would have to talk to, oh, we did talk about this, we did do this. So for me, it helped a lot.
Great ideas. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Any other thoughts, or should we move on to the next one? Get ahead of ourselves.
3, 2, 1. We're moving.
Elmo.
Bye-bye. Miss America Pie. Brought Chevy to the levee, but the levee is dry. Okay. We have too many meetings. Now, this is one I put in, but was it Jason? You want to bring your context into play on this one?
I mean, I can try. I've got 2 teams where I'm a Scrum Master, where I've got 2 teams where I'm at, and one of them is brand new. Like we just did our 3rd retrospective, literally. And so one of our process improvement items from Sprint 2 was to be able to see what other folks are working on. So they set up a code review meeting. And so in retrospective number 3 was, we have too many meetings and the frequency is impacting productivity. And that is about as succinct as I can be.
Awesome. I'll start in this one. What 3.5 is pretty good with working sessions, not meetings, that there is the idea that you don't have just status meetings. You just don't talk about stuff. You make sure you have the right people in for the right meeting that has a clear set of agenda, a clear purpose, and a result that you commit to by the end of the meeting. So it's really like a mini workshop that lasts half an hour, whatever the length is. And I'll borrow from Lisa Atkins, Coaching Agile Teams book, that says Scrum Masters and Agile coaches are meant to be the containers. You build the highest quality containers so the team can make the best value and content that will come out of it. That's what meetings are all about. Working sessions where you're creating a lot of value that results from it, so they can be even more valuable when they're not in meetings, which should be the majority of the time. So if the team is saying we got too many meetings, one tactic that we're going to likely put into Amy, Pete, if we need to talk about this more, it's in the book, is called the meeting removal machine, where you basically list out all the meetings, what the name of the meeting is, what the purpose of the meeting, who's involved in the meeting, the team, the product owner, the Scrum Master, directors, development managers, whoever, sponsor, and then you go through, list them all and go, okay, what can we change with these meetings based on who doesn't need to be there and who does, and the team votes on it. I don't need to be on this meeting is too long, that meeting is in the afternoon when there's no other meetings. I like to have my afternoon clear. I just talked to a friend earlier today from Verizon. He says they have no meeting Thursdays. Great, maybe we could do something like that. Nancy Hanks here knows that we had it where our afternoons for working with her on a project, the afternoons were clear for the most part. There are a couple exceptions, sprint planning day, but that was about it. So there's a lot of ways you can go about doing that. Meeting removal machine. Just list them out. If you like more details on that, I'm happy to share it too offline.
Yeah, let me toss in really, quickly, like just bringing up these sort of guidance points. Like one of the things of the principles I know from Agile is that I'll often call it the principle of slowing down to speed up. So sometimes it's important for us to get together and collaborate, but collaboration or getting together just for the sake of getting together is not productive or fruitful. So knowing the difference, and that's really what we're trying to list out here in the idea of working sessions, not meetings. So when we get together, how can we be the absolute most effective when we're together? And then also you need to have the time when we're not together so people can get stuff done, and have that good balance between those two. Greg, you got some good things in the chat here as far as being careful. Is it more about too much work or too many meetings? And unsustainable work practices. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
You're mute.
Yeah. Yep, that's one of the most used words these days, isn't it? You're on mute. Anyway, basically what I was talking about there was that even it's like we've got in New Zealand, I'm from New Zealand, and I'm in an organisation that is seen as one of the leaders in Agile in New Zealand. But when it actually comes down to it, when we do a lot of Agile stuff, but we don't, like the sustainable work to me is really one of the biggest measures of whether you're Agile or not, right? Is actually whether you've got sustainable work or not. And quite often you have too many meetings because you've got too much work because you're trying to do all of it. So that's where I was coming from.
Yeah. And for me, a lot of that I would put into the other planning category. So even like resource allocation is a category where I have people go through and figure out, you know, what things do you need? What things do you don't need? Are you budgeting? Like my teams all budget for 80% capacity. And because I found that if you budget for 100% capacity, you produce less than if you do 80%. And some of my highest performing teams budget for 60% capacity, and they blow away my 80% teams. So yeah, there could be multiple causes for this.
MC, Toby, and Kanessa, MCs. Do we continue? How are we doing on time here?
So we have up to 8:15, and since we've been pretty interactive and we don't see any questions here, we could go up to 8:15. And if there are questions, we encourage people to put it in the chat, and we'll pick them up. But I think this is very interesting, and we can go forward if you guys can stay.
Yeah, and I'd like to toss like one extra thing down there on the end. Actually, Michael, do you mind going back to the slides? But I just want to address that, like, there's one extra step that we haven't talked about yet, but we've been doing it, and it's an important part of what makes Amy work. So identifying the problems, identifying the points of collaboration, then identifying your scopes of influence, and then finding that thing. And then the fourth step there is to really just get together with a bunch of people and throw a bunch of things out on the table and talk about it first. Oftentimes we look at it, we go through it ourselves, and we're like, oh, I know how to solve it. And then we do the thing that we know how to solve. But there could be an even better thing out there. And when we get together in these communities of practice, when we get together in meetups, when we get together just internally between teams, or, you know, used to do it over lunch, you know, back when we were all in the office together, you know, and just chat out and toss these ideas back and forth, we discover better ways of doing things. It's like the quotes of Albert Einstein, you know, that in order to get out of a problem, we used to use different thinking than which got us into the problem, or something like that. No, I did not quote that well. So the reason that this group of us decided to put together the Library of Agile was to create a external system of record, a separate place that we could go to, and to try to create a community around sharing these ideas back and forth. We find it helps us as coaches, because when we're trying to convince people to do stuff, we can actually just point to the Library of Agile and say, but take a look at this, like it's good guidance out there, you know, and it's been sourced from a lot of different people, and it works in a lot of different things. And now they're not doing it because I told them to. They're doing it because the Library of Agile says, hey, this is something you should probably pay attention to. So that's one way that you can use the Library of Agile to your advantage. And then the other thing, well, here's a nice little tip I'll toss in here before we get to the next slide here, which is that we call this a choose your own Agile adventure, because I think it's very important to do this with your teams. So instead of you identifying a problem for your teams and then going in and looking these things up and then bringing them a thing, that's still sort of imposing on them. But if you take your teams to the site and have your teams identify problems that they want to solve and do a lean coffee and vote on problems that they want to solve, and then you go with them to the site and have them go through and see and what's missing, and then sit down and have a discussion about the different ways we could solve it, and then pick one, I just find you get much better outcomes by doing that together as a group and as a process, and again, as a point of collaboration around solving your problems together, than having the coach pick what that solution is going to be. If you would like a chance to, or some other folks to bounce ideas across, so our next slide here, Michael, we've got actually a Slack environment. And if you would like to join us, we have an AMY community of practice, and you can toss in ideas. We're also often sharing different articles and points of experience and things that we ran into or questions that we have for other folks over there. And so you're welcome to join us over there in that part. So those last main bits that I wanted to do is just to really drive that discussion, that idea like we're doing here of crowdsourcing solutions, just as being the best outcomes for different things. And then I'll pass it back if anybody has any questions about what's going on that you would like to ask. Or Michael, actually, let me hand it to you first. Anything else you want to say to wrap up?
I'll do this in a New York minute. So we wrote the book Shift so that you don't have to. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for that, allowing us to do that. So we like to call it the third wave of Agile adoption. Actually, Vasco Duarte also kind of helped us mold that idea, and that the first wave after project manager traditional is the Agile mind shift. And then the wave 2 we've been seeing a lot more is from project to product. Mick Kirsten and others have popularized focus on the product, focus on the product. Now we hear a lot more about focusing on people. It's coming all around because it always was in the Agile manifesto, individuals, interactions over process and tools. So it's people-centered everything, and we're looking over business models. I love the quote, and actually there's a tweet from Elon Musk where somebody said, your Tesla cars are amazing products and your factories are amazing. And he said, the factory is the product. That is our product. It's not the cars, it's the factories that produce the cars. And so that's how we look at software development too. We got to build amazing factories, not amazing software. The amazing software will follow amazing people that are in that amazing factory. So that includes multiple perspectives, co-creation. And of course, our book goes into pitfalls, how to apply. And it's a story. It's a novel like the Phoenix Project, written from a different person's perspective, each chapter. So you get all sorts of perspectives coming out there. And the continuity makes my head spin sometimes. But in any event, it's great to read. And here's a lot of context for us. And I'll just give one other link in the chat. Pete,
I'm going to beat you to it.
Yeah, you beat me to it. Thank you for doing that. You can sign up for the book early. As I mentioned, we'll probably have it next year. That's how it's looking. We're more than halfway done. We're beginning to accelerate on it. That's good news. And so you can get up to the first, I think, 8 chapters now. And it's probably going to be about 14 total to do.
Okay. I would just like to say thanks to Pete and Michael for sharing all of this with us. I feel like we probably could have gone another hour just kind of getting together and problem solving and throwing things out there. And so I appreciate everyone here who's been contributing and asking the questions and giving that this little anecdotes of working in Agile. And their book is Shift from Product to People, and that'll be out next year. Next month, we will be having Vinay Kumar doing 3 levers for creating and shaping culture. So I just want to thank you all for attending, and thanks again to Pete and Michael for presenting today.